Today is a very important day in the history of Indian banking, because today, the 1st of April 2017, saw the merger of State Bank of India with 5 of its associate banks. To understand this merger better, it's better that we recapitulate a bit of history of State Bank of India, when it was started, how it became State Bank of India, how the other associate banks were formed, when they were merged with, when they became subsidiaries of State Bank of India, and finally leading to this mega merger today on the 1st of April 2017. State Bank of India has had an origin in the British era. It was in the 19th century when Britain was ruling India. To be precise, on the 2nd of June 1806, that the Bank of Calcutta was formed. Calcutta was then a presidency of the British Empire, and the Bank of Calcutta, which was formed in 1806, started functioning with its headquarters in Calcutta. 2 other presidential banks, one was in Mumbai, or Bombay as it was called then, and the other was in Madras, or Chennai as it is called now. The Bank of Bombay was established in 1840, to be precise, on the 15th of April 1840, and the Bank of Madras was established on the 1st of July 1843. Thus, there were 3 presidential banks in operation: Bank of Calcutta, Bank of Bombay, and the Bank of Madras. These 3 presidential banks were then formed and were then merged, and they became the Imperial Bank of India. The Imperial Bank of India was formed in 1921, and that was a precursor to one of the greatest chapters in Indian banking history. The Imperial Bank of India, which was formed in 1921, had its shares from the Reserve Bank of India, which was actually formed later than the Imperial Bank of India. And to that extent, the Imperial Bank of India was functioning as an organization independent from the Reserve Bank of India until 1935, when the Reserve Bank of India was established. When the RBI Act was passed in 1934 and the Imperial Bank of India was then functioning, the Reserve Bank of India was started in 1935, and it was only in the year 1955 that the Imperial Bank of India actually became State Bank of India. The State Bank of India was formed in the year 1955, and very soon it became a behemoth organization, or a mammoth organization to say, and today it stands with a lot of pride in the fact that it is India's largest bank by any yardstick. It has the largest number of branches, it has the largest number of employees, it has the highest number of ATMs in India, it has the largest asset base also, and it has the largest customer base as well. As of March 2016, the revenues of State Bank of India were a whopping 1,63,855 crores, or about US $24 billion. And the net profits of State Bank of India as of March 2016 was about 9,950 crores, and in US dollar terms it was about $1.5 billion. State Bank of India alone had a branch network of about 14,000 branches, with an employee workforce of more than 207,000 people. It was in this background that the State Bank of India was functioning till now. On the other hand, we had the princely states which were in existence in pre-independent India, and many of these princely states had their Maharajas sponsoring banks in their own respective states. Notable amongst these princely states were the states of Mysore, Travancore, Hyderabad, Bikaner and Jaipur, Patiala, Indore, and Saurashtra. All these rulers had themselves started banks in these areas, and thus were formed the State Bank of Mysore, which was formed in the year 1913, the State Bank of Hyderabad, which was formed in the year 1941, the State Bank of Patiala, which was formed in the year 1917, and the State Bank of Bikaner and Jaipur, which was formed in the year 1963, and the Kerala-based State Bank of Travancore was formed in the year 1945. These associate banks, or subsidiary banks as they were called, were made subsidiaries of State Bank of India in the year 1971. 1971 saw these saw these various associate banks being merged and formed as subsidiaries of the State Bank of India. They became the subsidiaries of State Bank of India by a special act of parliament known as the State Bank of India Subsidiaries Act of 1959. Thus, these associate banks were functioning as independent banks till now, till today when the merger took place. But this is not the first time that an associate bank has been merged with State Bank of India. We have had two instances in the past. State Bank of Indore and State Bank of Saurashtra were merged with the State Bank of India in 2008. And although they were merged in 2008, they became operational, or their operations were integrated into that of State Bank of India only by the year 2010. Technology was not so advanced as it is today, and so they had to face many a teething problem before they were actually merged into the State Bank of India operations in the year 2010. But today the scenario is entirely different. With 5 associate banks being merged into State Bank of India today, these 5 are the State Bank of Mysore, the State Bank of Hyderabad, the State Bank of Patiala, the State Bank of Bikaner and Jaipur, and the State Bank of Travancore. These 5 entities will now merge with SBI, and a single combined entity called the State Bank of India is operational with effect from today, the 1st of April 2017. All the branches of associate banks will now henceforth be called branches of State Bank of India, and you could have seen from the websites of the different banks today that they have already changed their website into that of State Bank of India. If you peruse, or if you just surf through the channel, surf through the net now and search for State Bank of Hyderabad, it says this has now been changed to State Bank of India. Thus, the speed of integration today is bound to be much faster than what was happening in the year 2008. With the advent of technology and with the integration of systems, State Bank of India is bound to take over these assets of State Bank of the associate banks in a much more smoother manner. And according to some estimates, it is expected that this merger or integration process will be over in about 12 weeks' time. That is really fast considering the amount of work that is involved. And although this merger has been talked of for many years or perhaps many decades, I, being an employee of the State Bank of Mysore or an ex-employee of State Bank of Mysore, remember that as long back as 1978, the merger of SBI with associate banks was being talked of. But it did not happen until now. But it's good that it has happened. The effects of such a kind of merger are many. We could see this effect from 3 different angles: from the angle of State Bank of India, from the angle of the subsidiary banks or the associate banks as they are called, and from the angle of the customers of the State Bank of India or the customers of the associate banks. For State Bank of India, it means the case of a big bank becoming bigger. SBI, after the merger in the new avatar, will become the 4th largest bank in the world in terms of number of branches, and it will enter the top 50 in terms of assets. It is indeed a matter of regret that India, with such a big economy, multi-trillion-dollar economy, and with a very vast and strong financial system, we could not have a bank in the top 100 banks of the world till now. State Bank of India, which has always been the largest commercial bank in India, was not amongst the top 100 banks of the world till now. It was somewhere well over the 150th rank. Both in terms of number of branches, it was not the largest in terms of the number of branches or in terms of assets. For State Bank of India, this is a big step. It will leapfrog into becoming the 4th largest bank in the world in terms of number of branches, and will also enter the top 50 league in terms of assets. This is a big advantage for State Bank of India. Although it is already an established global brand, this merger is going to give it a bigger slot in the World Bank or in the list of global banks. The effect of State Bank of India cannot be better than what it is aimed now. For the associate banks, it has been a blessing in disguise as well as a curse. I say this with a clear mind that it is both a blessing in disguise and a curse, because I have gone through the experience of being an associate bank employee. It's a blessing in disguise for the associate banks, because they will now come out of their regional centric focus and become an all India bank, so to say. Although associate banks have for long had branches across the country, they have not really thought themselves of as more than being a regional bank. For example, State Bank of Mysore was always thought of being Karnataka centric, although it had branches all over the country. So the associate banks can now proudly say that they can now proudly say that they are going to become a truly global bank. That's good for the associate banks. And from being a subsidiary bank, they become State Bank of India. That's a big changeover in their image and in the perception of the eyes of the public. State Bank of Mysore becoming State Bank of India is a big shot in the arm. On the other hand, the flip side of the exercise is that merger of these associate banks with State Bank of India, in my personal opinion, has been pending for so long, for so many decades, because of the differences in culture and ethos amongst the employees of the different banks. State Bank of Travancore, for example, is headquartered in Kerala, where the cultural ethos and the cultural way of working, etc., is far different from that of State Bank of Patiala or that of State Bank of Bikaner in Jaipur. The person working in State Bank of Mysore will not have the same cultural ethos and way of working as his counterpart in State Bank of Bikaner and Jaipur. This was for a long time the bane of contention, plus the fact that the unions in the country, the bank unions in the country, were very strong until recently. They opposed such a move because they felt, and probably rightly so, that the employees of these associate banks will lose their seniority when it comes to promotions, etc., if they are merged with State Bank of India. For example, an employee in State Bank of Mysore, when he reaches the level of a chief manager, could aspire to become an assistant general manager or a general manager or a chief general manager before his retirement. But with State Bank of India becoming such a large organization, and there will be several layers of managers in different stages, it's not clear how the promotion and seniority of these associate bank employees will be affected. We'll have to wait and watch. On the other hand, so far, there have been only a very few instances of an associate bank employee heading the bank in which he worked for. As far as I know, one point is that the State Bank of Mysore had a managing director who was earlier an officer of the same bank. Otherwise, people have always been deputed from the State Bank of India to become the managing directors of the associate banks. Now that situation will change. What will happen to the senior most employee of an associate bank? Will he have the chance and the opportunity to become the member of the top management of State Bank of India? Well, that remains to be seen. So there are pluses and there are minuses in such a merger. But whenever we talk of a new thing, we are well advised to look at the positives more than the negatives. And the positives, I think, far outweigh the negatives. State Bank of India will no doubt become a global bank, will no doubt become a bank of far-reaching magnitudes with the reach of over 17,000 branches, with a combined account base of over 75 crore accounts, and with the integration of technology, the bankers, the employees of State Bank of India will have far more reason to cheer and smile. And for the customer, it is a blessing. Definitely it is a blessing for the customers of the associate banks, because earlier, when the associate bank was a separate entity, the limits of sanctioning loans were very low for the managers and chief managers of branches of associate banks. Anything above a certain limit had to go to the zonal office, and then from there on to the head offices of the respective banks, where probably the general manager or the managing committee would look at the proposal and take a view of sanctioning the loan or not. But with a large bank like State Bank of India, the amount of decentralization and the amount of delegation is bound to increase far more, thus giving an opportunity to the customers to get loans sanctioned at the local levels itself. So this is a blessing for the customers. The biggest blessing for the customers is that he is going to have access to a lot more number of ATMs across the country. Every street corner would have an SBI ATM now. That is the benefit for the customer. And let's talk of employees in a different angle. Let's talk of recruitment of employees. Will State Bank of India in his new avatar recruit more employees, or will they recruit less employees, and what is the status going to be? If one had tracked the recruitment advertisements of the associate banks, it is very clear that for the past 2 years, no associate bank has released an advertisement for the recruitment of officers or clerical staff in their banks in the last maybe couple of years or so. Probably they anticipated this merger with State Bank of India and so kept the thing pending at that level. However, with the advent of the merger and with the merger becoming a reality today, what is going to be the effect of the number of employees? One senses that the number of employees will have to go up because the bank is going to grow much bigger in size. But there is also a different opinion which says that the number of employees could actually come down because of attrition and because of digital efforts, digitalization efforts and so on. Attrition could become a reality because of 2-3 reasons. One is retirement, the other is people taking voluntary services, and the third and a very important factor in the sense that people may take VRS unable to bear the cultural differences in the way of approach and the way of functioning of the larger entity with the State Bank of India and the associate banks. Now there is a question from one Ms. Gayatri Sharma. It says, sir, may I know what are the 5 banks that have been merged with SBI? Ms. Gayatri, the 5 banks which have been merged with SBI are the State Bank of Mysore, the State Bank of Patiala, the State Bank of Bikaner and Jaipur, the State Bank of Hyderabad, and the State Bank of Travancore. I hope I am clear on that. Thank you. So this is the ultimate effect of the merger of associate banks with the State Bank of India. There is no need for despair. SBI will continue to recruit people, will continue to recruit people at different levels, but my own gut feeling is that the pyramid might get narrower as it reaches the top. As it reaches the top, the pyramid will get narrower, but at the lower levels, there could be a kind of a there could be a kind of a plateau at the middle level, with not many changes happening there. But at the lower level or at the junior most level, the banks will continue to recruit in full flow. The State Bank of India will continue to recruit, and there is no reason for alarm amongst the fresh and just graduated youth of the country. SBI will continue to recruit. There is a comment from one Mr. Raghukant Joshi, and he is asking what happens with my SBH account. My dear friend, nothing will happen to your SBH account. The account will continue. Only thing is, instead of State Bank of Hyderabad account, it will become a State Bank of India account. So you can be very proud to have an account with the country's largest bank and one of the largest in the world. So I hope that clarifies your point, Mr. Joshi. Nothing will happen to your account. You will become a customer of State Bank of India. So that is it from me on this discussion on the associate banks merger with SBI. A very historic day indeed in the history of Indian banking. If 1955 was when the State Bank of India was born, 2017 is when the State Bank of India has become a truly global bank. Before I sign off, Mr. Joshi continues. He is asking, if I have already account with SBI, what happens? Nothing will happen. You will have 2 different accounts. One, the original account of State Bank of India, and the other account which has been transferred from State Bank of Hyderabad. And it will be up to you to either continue to have 2 accounts or to have a single account. This is a very good question from one Ms. Ravi Teja Sunkara. To apply for PO post in SBI, there is a limit of 4 times. Now whether it applies to associate PO also. My dear friend Mr. Sunkara, The associate banks do not exist anymore, They have gone out of the picture. So there is no question of their recruiting anymore. From today, there is only one combined entity, and that entity is called the State Bank of India. The associate banks are not there anymore. So their question of recruitment does not arise at all. I hope this clarifies your point. That's all from me this session. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you again. Thanks. Bye.